I will call to order the City of Buellton's Planning Commission for Thursday, November 3rd, 2022. Vice Chair Mercado, will you please lead us in the pledge?
Let's do that. I'll stand, please. Hand over heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Commissioner Blockdyke is absent. Commissioner Liggett,
Here.
Commissioner Sarkia,
Here.
Vice Chair Mercado,
Here.
Chair Hamilton.
Here. Reordering of the agenda. I don't believe there's any tonight. Presentations, none. Approval of the minutes from October 6th. I have a motion.
I make to approve. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public comments. This is where members of the audience wishing to address the Planning Commission may do so on any matters that are not on the agenda. So anything else that's not on the agenda, if you have comments, compliments, complaints, and I believe we have a speaker slip for Ms. Carroll.
Good evening, all. Good to see you all again. Thank you for listening to me today. I don't know if you've heard. We began this project in 2012 for the bowling alley. At the time we started this project, we were told, rah, rah, sis, boom, bah, the city's gonna fast track this because we can't wait. Claire's got her pink bowling ball waiting, waxed up, ready to go. Yahoo. And so here we are. If we're being fast tracked, I pity anyone else in this town trying to get a project approved. I listed a few of the highlights that we've gone through along the way.
Okay.
I got the link. I'm on. No worries.
Uh-oh.
On. Hola, hola.
Can you
Oh, boy.
mute something?
Should I?
Okay, hang on a second. I think it's.
That's my mom.
Oh, that's your mom.
Hi, Mom.
So I've given a few highlights of just kind of the highlights of some of the things that we've gone through that have been just mentally, physically, financially exhausting for us along the way. As you know, we started off in Industrial Way. At the time, for the city to give us permission to do this, we have to give them an easement for the Riverwalk. If you want your project, give us an easement. Great, it's perfect. If anybody sues the city for any reason at all, you have to pay our attorney fees. Well, I paid thousands of dollars in attorney fees because of Terrebonne, which was just another 2 or 3 year. If you remember, you weren't even married yet. After the nightmare and the threats that they were going to sue us and file a couple lawsuits, and I don't care, we're going to delay your project at least 2 years. Rose sat in on a few of the ridiculous meetings that we had. At that point, we said, shoot. There was another property that we thought, well, maybe the man that has this property, since he's not doing anything anyway, would like to trade. He's just going to let it sit anyway. So Ron Anderson contacted him, and turned out, son of a gun, he just sold it. Wow. But there's another property now that just came back on the market. So it all worked out, got a buyer, we moved on. Again, we get to the new property. Oh, I forgot my other paper. So we got to the new property. And again, if you want us to let you have your project, you have to give us an easement for the Riverwalk. But we also want you to give us an easement for the trail going up the hill. Okay, but you're not paying me. You can do that, but you're paying for it. I'm not paying. Whatever needs to be done to it is on you. But I will let you do it. We thought this is going to be great. People can go for a walk. They can come up to the bowling alley. Kids can be riding their bikes. It's going to be, oh, perfect. So we said, okay, fine, we'll pay for it, or they'll pay for it. Let's move on. So along the way, we started thinking, we've got a lot of transients living in the riverbed. There's some weird stuff going on there. We need to be able to close that off because we can't be having people sleeping in our parking lot and whatever. So we asked when we had our final, or when we had our approval, we said, we want to control when the gate is open. We want to be able to lock it at night. We don't want this thing to be a street. So fine. During one of my Zoom meetings I had during COVID, I was informed that before any permits would be issued, we had to complete the path, grading, put DG, whatever. We had to make it all. And if we don't do that, we don't get our permits. And I said, well, when we first did this, it was, you do it, but you have to maintain it over the years. That's fine. Nope, nope, nope. Meanwhile, all the easements aren't completed along the way. You don't, it could be in the article in the paper, could be 10 years before that whole path is even complete. But yet they're wanting us to do this now. Well, a lot of gophers live on that hill that constantly maintained. That we never did at this point. We were told at one of our meetings that the left side of our building was too plain. Now, if you look from the freeway, it's pretty from the back, it's pretty from the right side, it's pretty from the front, but the side on the left faces Crocker's Lockers or whatever that place is called. Well, you know, if they ever tear that down, that's going to be ugly. They don't need to see a plain side of the building. We want it to look pretty. Here, take it back, make some more changes. Well, can't we just say we're going to do landscaping? And nope, nope, no, I'm sorry, take it back. Well, when you take it back, we had to have the architect now had to make things. It cost me about $1,200 to do that, plus the months lost in resubmitting, make sure we had the required, I don't know how, 90, 60 days notice to the letters to all the neighbors and get it back on the calendars. That took months that we lost more time. It's very disturbing to me when I think of that our left side of our building was plain. When I look at the eyesore at Tractor Supply and what's on the back side of that facing McMurray Road when you get off the freeway, that is the ugliest thing I have ever seen. It's cement color. It's just wow, wow. And this is what we were told. No, if they tear down Crocker's Lockers, it's too plain. We can't do it that. So we finally, and backside of Albertsons and CVS is seen from the freeway. There's nothing special back there that people see from the freeway. It's the backside of a building. We finally submitted our plans to the county December 6th of 2019. We were pushing to get them in because we had to make sure we got in for the 2019 codes because 2020 codes back to the drawing board. We were expecting our final in March. Lucky us, COVID hit. We all know what happened then. We had no choice at that point but to time out because we were running out of checks and we didn't know if we were going to have the money and we couldn't be, you know, so call time, we could have died. So later we decided, okay, I think I feel comfortable enough that we can move on. So we moved on, we resubmitted to the county, and then the county told us that we should be done, they could file for our grading permits the third week of January, this last January. Great, all right. Train's leaving the station, we're gonna move. So along comes, next thing you know, we have 4 delays from the county. Oh, we'll do it now. We'll do it now. We'll do it now. We'll do it now. It's like, what the, oh, Carol, we need another check because now they want this. And oh, it went back. And, oh, now they want this. Okay, what is going on? You asked for something to be done. We do it. And now it's like, oh, you know what? We looked over here and you need to do this. This went on. In August, I got word that there was another $1,000 worth of something to be done, and I had to write a check in order to move on. All right, $1,000 here, let's do it. We're at the finish line. We're almost done. Hallelujah. We can finally get the show on the road. It's been 10 years. So then I get a request that the city of Buellton needs a check for $35,000 for us to proceed. Mike, can you give me my letters? The stack.
All of them.
And we had, there was finally at this point we see, great. Yeah, we're almost there. Hallelujah. $35,000. They needed to do something and give us our permit. Write another big check. Then we find out that there's a company that you guys work with, Tetra Tech, and they requested all of them, Excuse me. I wonder, excuse me. I wanted to hand these out to all of you. Sorry about that. So we find out that Tetra Tech from the city, now city of Buellton, while we're waiting for the county to get county approval, we find out the city of Buellton has a request. Tetra Tech that is contracted with the city, I gave you what their final requests were. And the comments from the water place. One of the requests that Tech, and meanwhile, I will say that we paid $9,600 to them for this request at this point in time. Tetra, or my flowers company, in order for them to do what Tetra Tech has requested, is going to cost me another $26,000. One of the things that they requested was a demolition plan for a vacant lot. If there was a demolition plan wanted or needed, that should have been addressed day one in 2019 when we bought the property, or 2018 or 17, whenever the heck, 16. November 2016 is when we bought the property. Why that wasn't addressed then, and now at the last minute, that is now an issue. That's insane to put people through this. After all this time and all the stress and everything, when I got that, it's like, screw it, we're done. I'm sorry, I can't play anymore. I don't have the energy, I don't have the sanity. I mean, this has just driven me friggin' crazy. And there's no reason for it. So hopefully the person, we put it up for sale, and hopefully whoever buys it will give you the much needed family entertainment center that everyone in this valley seems to want. We can't play anymore. We're taking our ball and going home. Thank you very much. It's been very interesting, and you won't see me trying to build a project ever. I don't know. It's crazy. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And we're very sorry to hear that. Any other public comments not on the agenda? I'm assuming we're all here for different agenda items. Consent calendar, none. Continued public hearings, none. New public hearings. Resolution number 22-09, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Buellton, California, recommending City Council approval of a one-year time extension. 22-TE-04, request for final development plan 16-FDP-06 and tentative tract map TTM 31061 for the Buellton Hub project located at the southern terminus of Industrial Way on assessor's parcel number 099690048 and making findings in support thereof. Before I turn it over to Planning Director Kiefer, I will disclose that I had an ex parte meeting with the applicant agent Gavin Moores on September 28th.
I also would like to make that notice as well. Thank you.
Okay, Planning Director Kiefer.
Good evening, Chair Hamel and Commissioners. So this item was originally noticed on September 1st, 2022, and due to several delays, as detailed in your staff report, we are here tonight for the consideration of making a recommendation to the City Council regarding the BUE 17 or the Hub project time extension request number 1. An application has been filed by SBID LLC, who's the property owner, and Gavin Moores and Lonnie Roy, agents for the property owner, requesting a one-year time extension for the previously approved Hub project located at the southern terminus of Industrial Way on the 17-acre parcel there at the end. A vicinity map is included in your staff report as an attachment indicating the subject property. I will note in the original approval documents, the incorrect parcel number was listed. However, the map and other depictions shown do give a fair assessment of the parcels actually benefiting from the approvals. So final development plans expire after 5 years. However, the applicant can apply for up to 2 one-year time extensions for final development plans. This is the first request for a time extension on this project. The final development plan was set to expire on February 22nd, 2023. However, the applicant applied for a time extension on July 20th, 2022 in advance of the date of expiration. So for tentative tract maps, there is a statutory extension specific to maps that has been argued to apply to this map by the applicant team, and which has been reviewed and accepted by the city attorney's office, with the inclusion of the requirement that the applicant indemnify the city. That statutorily extended the approvals of the tentative map to August 22nd, 2022. The applicant applied for a time extension on July 20th, 2022 in advance of the date of expiration. So beyond this statutory extension for the map, the Buellton Municipal Code does allow for up to 3 one-year time extensions for the map component of the project. And this is the first extension request for that tentative tract map. The Planning Commission may, upon good cause shown, recommend approval of the time extension to the City Council for 1 year. Staff at this point is unaware of any reason to deny the extension, and it is reasonable that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the request at this time. So given the current property owner's expressed desire to retain property entitlements, and in light of the delays that have resulted from the COVID-19 pandemic, staff considers that this time extension is reasonable. A copy of the final resolution has been sent to each commissioner and also provided hard copy here tonight as well. There are copies sitting on the counter there as well. And so if adopted, this resolution will be made part of this copy of the resolution will be made part of the record. So with that, the recommendation is that the Planning Commission consider the adoption of resolution number 22-09 as written in the staff report. That concludes my report, and I'm otherwise available for any questions. I do know that the applicant, Gavin Moores, is here tonight and does have a presentation prepared, but that concludes my report. And at this time, I'm available for questions.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we hear from the applicant with his presentation, and then we'll go to questions. Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Load that up here. Let me just a second. Okay.
Chair Hamill, fellow commissioners, thank you for your time. I just have a few short slides that we put together this evening. Obviously, it's pretty disappointing to hear Carol's story there and exactly what has happened. But I think it does underscore that this is a very kind of detailed business. It requires a lot of will, a lot of commitment. And as this process passes on, it requires a lot of money that is really invested in the community. And I understand people's opinions, and everybody's change is difficult to accept. But you know, Carol went through a lot, and I kind of feel for her. I really do. Anyway, if we go to the first slide there, this is just a simple site plan. This shows you the site plan that was approved for the Buellton Hub. It shows you the building layouts. It shows you the simple correlation of the site for the open space and the surrounding buildings. And I think that it's a good set that this is the project that is before you this evening. There isn't any other project. It is just the hub project. If we go to the next slide. If you actually look at this list here, what you'll see is the list of projects that have been granted extensions already by the Planning Commission and the City of Buellton, depending on the entitlement process. It's 10 projects there. Those 10 projects, there is one right now that is moving forward. That is the project that we have at the end of Industrial Way. I think it's important for the city as a whole, not just any particular areas of the city, but the city as a whole, that with the empty parcels that we have, that is important that projects move forward. And I think that that is a vital consideration for the city in general as a whole. If we could go to the next slide, please. This is the tentative map that, I think you missed one there. There we go. This is the tentative map that was approved by the city and the Planning Commission. This map shows the purple easement on the top, which was the easement that is in ingress and egress for this particular parcel to the public roads, which will provide for the exit out through Rancho de Maria. The shaded area to the left, that is the utility easement where the sewer and water mains are that come around that connect to Rancho de Mira as well, which is the reason why that easement of access and egress was exchanged. And then the blue lines is just a general line for utility installations. The green line is the trail easement. And then the red line was actually a public right of way for access. And then we added in at the option a connection trail for Rancho de Maria residents to move through with a gate. You can go to the next slide, please, Andrea.
Do you want me to go to the text? Because it was after.
Yeah, we can take
That
a
one.
sec. So this is the list of topics that we discussed at length with Rancho de Maria. This slide is actually directly taken from a presentation that we gave to the Rancho de Maria residents at that time. And these are the points where we agreed to make concessions. I don't need to read them all out. They're pretty self-explanatory. And I certainly appreciated the communication that we had with Rancho de Maria residents and the HOA at that time. And we recognize that communication is really kind of an important process through this to go through. And we haven't wavered in our commitment to do that even now. And we hope to continue to do so in the coming weeks. If you go to the next slide. This is the submitted final map that we have. This is just one page of 8 pages now that is into the city for a review. And this shows you the level of detail. I don't even understand all this stuff. I got to be honest. This is surveying details. It's taken a considerable amount of time and a considerable amount of effort and put the cost to one side by Burke Blake to do this work. And it's just, we've had multiple conversations to get to this point because of various monuments that weren't established correctly, but everything's set right now. So what this map does, it's very, very simple. There's no approval of buildings. This map on there, it defines primarily the separation of one lot into 3 individual parcels. On the tentative map, they were listed as A, B, and C. For recordation purposes in Subdivision Map Act, it's just like 1, 2, and 3. And so you can see that the residential portion is on lot 1, the light industrial portion is on lot 2, and the mixed use is on lot 3. The wavy line that's down on lot 3 there, that is a trail around the retention basin. And then there is obviously an easement that goes across the bridge to connect to Industrial Way. I think those are the only key points that I want to just bring across. I'd like to pause this moment in time because I know there'll be a number of comments and conversations, and I'd like to come back to address those later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the commission? Commissioner Liggett for Andrea or for Gavin?
We're gonna have more time to make comments later.
Yes, we'll follow with comments.
I'll go ahead and wait for
Okay.
following comments.
Commissioner Sarkia, any questions?
No comments at this time.
And Vice Chair Mercado.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, and I also do not have any. So at this time, this is a public hearing. I will open it up for public comments. If you wish to speak on this item, we need a speaker slip for the record. They're over by the door. I've got some already submitted and we'll take a stab at that in a second. Just want to remind the audience and the potential speakers that tonight, the Planning Commission is voting on the 1-year time extension for the existing project approved 5 years ago. We're not discussing or approving any other projects. It's just the 1-year extension. If we can keep the comments to the item on the agenda. And with that, I will start with Mark Kavanaugh.
Mark Kavanaugh, I live at 72 Six Flags Circle. This has really been a disappointment. I went through the plan and checked Mr. Moore's answer to the general plan. That thing is so full of holes. It's embarrassing to the city that you approved this. This planning commission approved a plan that should have never been allowed to get to first base. You've upset our neighborhood. You're going to let this thing run on for 3 more years or 2 more extensions? Well, we're all sitting there. What's going on? What's going on? We're upset. We're really mad. This is ridiculous. I was a Parks and Recreation Commissioner. Every item that came up, I read and knew what was supposed to be done, including the vaunted river trail that is Mr. Moore's answer to the circular traffic requirement. Now, if you'd been around here in 2012 when that happened, we had a room full of people like this, of property owners who said, no way that we're going to grant easements or provide access. So that plan is a wish list that is never going to happen in our lifetimes. Those property owners are going to sue any government that tries to put a plan on their put a trail on their property. It's not going to happen. But you guys use that down there, and it's really terrible. I wrote 4 letters to you guys. You can read all the details. I can't go through it all now, but this is a travesty. It's embarrassing to the city. This commission and the council had voted for this and approved it. You ought to be embarrassed. I'm embarrassed for you. I'm disgusted. This shouldn't be kicked down the can. This can shouldn't be kicked down the road one day further. Should have never been approved in the first place, and approving it for another year is only kicking the can down the road. You people need to face up to what your responsibilities are and the fact that you didn't do the job in the first place, and get it done now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Jill Kavanaugh.
Hi, my name is Jill Kavanaugh, and I also live at 72 Six Flags Circle. We're 35-year residents of Buellton. And one of the things that we loved about Buellton when we moved here was the small town community and the atmosphere that it provided for raising a family in a community that wasn't going to end up looking like Orange County. And I'm sorry, but in my opinion, the development as it's proposed and as you're planning to grant an extension to approve is going to look like buildings that you see in Orange County, and it's going to highly impact our neighborhood because we're going to be staring at 3-story tenement looking buildings for the rest of our lives in our community. And I can guarantee you that neither Mr. St. George nor Mr. Morris will ever have to experience that on a day-to-day basis. We will. The other concern about this entire project and the way it was approved back in 2018, and at that time we didn't get a lot of outreach to have input, and it was approved to rezone what was light industrial to include residential at the end of a cul-de-sac industrial street with no other access point for traffic for all of the people that are going to reside there, all of the people that are going to work there. And I'd like to know what the fire department has to say about a single access point development like that, because there will be no permanent ingress and egress through Rancho de Maria on Shadow Mountain, because we'll fight that until the day we die. And so that's not going to be the solution, we hope, at least in our opinion, for mitigating the traffic issues and the safety issues that are going to come out of putting a lot of residents at the end of an industrial road. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Paul Kavanaugh.
Hello, my name is Paul Kavanaugh, live at 72 Six Flags Circle. Recently moved back in January after living many years other places. So it's nice to be home. And then I heard about this project. I heard Mr. Moores and yourself, Mrs. Hamill, say that there's no other projects on the table. It's only about the hub. But we've had a lot of meetings about Campus 36 or View 17 or whatever they're talking about doing as their ultimate plan. So it seems like they're only asking for this extension to push through a bigger, higher density project. I don't think they have any intention of actually building the hub. And it seems pointless to extend something that they're not going to use. I also saw an article in the paper about some planned development in Solvang that would be like a mixed use condo, hotel with automated parking structure. And that also seems ridiculous for the valley. I think we want to be a long way from the point where we would ever need automated parking. That just doesn't seem right for this valley or this community, and this project doesn't seem right here on Industrial Way. So I'd strongly urge or ask that you not approve this extension. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then we have John Dorwin.
John Dorwin, 104 Six Flags Circle. I have two issues that I believe were missed as to subdivision map act compliance with respect to the extension. The first one is overburden. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that part of this project anticipates coming through Rancho de Marie for the heavy equipment to create the bridge across Saca Creek on the west side of the property. And I don't believe that the existing easements, which I haven't been able to locate through the title company, provide for construction easements for heavy equipment coming through Rancho de Marie. And I think this is significant because there's a more recent case that is subsequent to the approval of this project, which requires just compensation for access to private property. And that case is Cedar Point Nursery versus Hassid, Hassid. And that's at volume 194, United States Report. And that's a 2021 case, which says if there's a physical invasion of private property, just compensation is required under the 5th and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution as a constitutional right of the property owner. And in this case, the property owner of the parcel, I believe, which is going to be crossed is the Rancho de Marie Homeowners Association number 1. So my issue is twofold. I don't believe the existing easement would be adequate for heavy construction equipment to cross the property of Rancho de Marie Homeowners Association, number 1. And number 2, if the project is anticipating that access so that the bridge can be constructed for permanent access to the project, there's a provision in the Subdivision Map Act where the local agency has to delegate the authority to condemn to the developer, and then the developer has to purchase that access right. I've been through this issue before in Solvang about 20 years ago with a condominium development on 5th and Arhus Street, where the developer Chip Handley was going to have to condemn to get access out to 5th Street. And I'm familiar with the MAP Act. I've seen how it's supposed to work, and I don't see anything about that with respect to the extension. And in my feeling, the easement law has been clarified in 2021 by the United States Supreme Court in the Cedar Point Nursery case. Thank you.
Thank you. And Terry Albrecht.
Terry Albrecht, 181 Victory Drive. I have a question directly for you, if I could. How many residents are you putting in here? How many total residents, including the ones where you have a workspace with the residents? How many people will be renting this?
So in total, there's 55 residences on this project.
Including the working ones? Because we were told there was a much higher number of
You're confusing this project with the other project.
Which project are you talking about now?
I don't know.
Okay, well, my question for you is simply this. From the papers that I have, we were looking at well over 100. So did that get whittled down? Did we miss a meeting where that was whittled down?
Okay, so let me clarify.
Okay.
So this is a 1-year time extension on the project known as the Hub.
Oh, so the previous project.
And it was approved 5 years ago.
Right, that I do.
Okay,
understand.
and so that's what we're
so this
talking
is-
about
we're not talking
tonight.
About Ed St. George one.
Correct.
Oh, geez, I must have missed that. I actually had to go out for a phone call because he had great questions for you. So, okay, all right, sorry. When will that be coming up?
We don't know. It's, we've looked at it as a conceptual review, and we've looked at it going into a specific plan for that property, but it's all, a formal application has not been submitted.
So currently, the applicant team is at the beginning stages of preparation of a specific plan.
And how will what's being dealt with on the hub have bearing on it?
The hub, the extension that's being considered tonight is
Yeah.
completely separate from the application that's coming in for the Campus 36. They're located on the same parcel, but they're two separate applications. So if the hub project, the currently entitled project, is extended tonight, that doesn't have any bearing on the Campus 36, which would be a separate application that they're filing.
So you have basically two applications going for the same property. One has already been approved 5 years ago. And the other one is in the pipe to start being approved, but we're still debating the one that was approved 5 years ago. This is a bit confusing.
Sure, go ahead. Okay,
You
if
wanna talk about
I can
code?
address that. So, as mentioned, this is for the hub project that was approved 5 years ago, and the developer has the right to proceed forward with that project. And what they're doing is following what's laid out in our code, allowing them to request time extensions. Now, there's a separate process that has been, the city has been approached by the developer, the new owners of the property, to potentially prepare a specific plan. At the point in time which that specific plan is reviewed, and if it gets approved, then the existing entitlement for the hub project, the condition would be to require that to be terminated. So, but in the meantime, the developer is moving forward with that project, because what if the hub, the specific plan doesn't get approved? They are still entitled to have this development project that's approved.
Okay. All right, well, that's a messy yarn. All right, well, I'll read up on. I thought it was for the other thing. I misunderstood. All right.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come up and fill out a speaker slip and talk about the extension tonight? Okay, we will, oh,
I wasn't going to, but I guess I do need to say something. I am Robert Berg. 63 Six Flags Circle. Been here for about 6 years. First off, I want to say I'm impressed with the amount of effort that Mr. Moore and St. George, or whatever it is, have put in the last information that is available on the computer for the hub project. They've done a lot of work, and I've only just had an opportunity to review, even just yesterday and today, in terms of the ground level that they've put in, and the position for the buildings. There's a big flag on there, and I brought this up before in my discussions about the fact that this is being developed in a floodplain. We on Six Flags Circle are very fortunate that back in '86, when that development was made, it was made at the level of 345 of elevation. The hub project is like 18 to 25 feet below that level of where Rancho de Maria is. This has always been a concern to me. Apparently it isn't a concern to Mr. Moore, and they've shown areas of where the floodplain is. To me, it's a high risk to install. We haven't put areas into a floodplain in the city of Buellton to that extent. Okay, so the floodplain is an issue to me. The egress with the access at the end of industrial is a concern to me, because we're putting in a great number of buildings, activity, cars that are going to be going up and down Industrial Way. I've mentioned that before. I continue to make that as a concern. I am especially concerned about the egress that's granted from Rancho de Maria. That's, quote, egress for emergency. As that development is, I know people, I know what's going to happen, or I believe what's going to happen is that as that development, if it were successful, would be an enormous amount of pressure to open up the other end of that zone for egress for more than just emergency. That's just inevitable. People who are living there are going to be crying, we can't get in, we can't get out, we've got to go all the way around, la, la, la. That's going to happen. We're going to have pressure on that. And Santa Maria, many have said, that's not going to happen. Well, there's going to be a big fight about it. Okay. I want to say again, I'm impressed with the amount of effort they put on the hub. Would you ask a question? What happens if the extension doesn't happen? February 22nd, could you address that to me?
So if the extension would not be approved, then the entitlements would be void and invalid. They would have expired.
So all of the effort that these gentlemen have put together would have to start over?
That's correct. And just to clarify, these entitlements are still valid through February.
February 22nd.
Yes, correct.
That's the 5-year pay.
Correct. So if
there was a gentleman that mentioned that maybe it wasn't a good plan to have approved this. I, with all due respect, have to second that. It wasn't a good plan to approve this project in the first place. Maybe because it was approved, we do owe them an opportunity for another year. I have the same issues about approving this. And then, well, we're going to do something that's even better, put even more pressure on the industrial way and more pressure on our egress. So the fact that they're even looking for an additional alternative plan to the hub, I will finally say I have questions as to the financial feasibility of even the hub, let alone an additional expansion from your current plan. So I guess I just want to finish by saying I'm opposed to both the hub plan, and I certainly would be opposed to some expansion of that plan in the current location. Great idea, but just the wrong place. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And anyone else last minute wanting to say anything? Okay, I will officially close the public hearing. I will turn it back to the commission and comments. Commissioner Liggett.
Yes. I guess I share some of the concerns with the commitment that the developer has in terms of building the hub as designed. I guess question for you, Mr. Moore, how dedicated are you to develop this hub, and what steps have you taken in order to accomplish that?
So the reason why I paused my presentation this evening is because there continues to be misinformation, misunderstanding, and I apologize for that if there is. So let's try and provide some clarity. And I'm going to stand over here so everybody can see me. Let's talk about the easements in first. Do you mind putting the site plan back up, please, Andrea? Let's go back to the previous tentative track map.
Okay, let's try that again. Okay. Do you want this next?
The one that's this one. I find it ironical that everybody who's sitting here from Rancho de Maria would not be here if this easement was not granted. Your rights to live in your homes depend on water and sewer service. That's what happened and why that easement was exchanged. That easement for this right, this property to public roads. You do not live in a private community. All your streets in Rancho de Maria are public. The only piece of land that is private is this little strip right here that connects this property across the basketball courts to the public roads. I forwarded that easement to Joe Mansur. That easement is recorded. It shows up on every title report that you can pull. So I don't know which title company you're talking to, but I can, well, First American are the ones who issued the title policy. I can give you the name of the person to speak to there, and I'm happy to help you so you get the easement.
Is the instrument number shown on the parcel now?
Joe has that, all of that information. Yes.
He doesn't have it.
Is it right up there?
Well, I will address that separately with you afterwards, so I can provide that.
Public right of way, but there is also the private land. And we have easements from 1985 and 2013.
So I'm happy to explain all of that issue for you. Okay, so let's go back to the first. So I'm sorry about this, but this is, we have to clarify this.
Should we continue?
Yes,
It's not really meant to be a back.
I think we need to continue
Yeah.
this just for public education.
If you can keep it as factual as possible.
I'm doing
and
that.
We will allow, we're not going to go back and forth
Right.
between the audience and the applicant tonight.
Andrea, please just go to the first slide that shows the one with the imposed, that one there. Okay. This is the strip that covers the easement. I can provide you the easement instruction and the document number. These are the public streets. In regards to the construction access, one of the things that you will read in that instrument number, it is a ingress and egress for the benefit of this parcel. In the previous discussions in 2017, we said we would not forward that as a full easement access. What we would do is we would restrict that easement. I can speak to you separately about that later on. In regards to the financial impact, if someone pulled that up, yeah, I can talk to you about the financial impact later on, but that is also not a purvey of any decision, discretionary or ministerial approval of the city of Buellton.
Sure, I will. I only mentioned that.
No, let's.
As a deterrent, but talking to you as a developer.
I understand that, sir.
I wouldn't put money on that project.
Okay. And as regards to the
Okay, Gavin, we need to stop. What we wanted to hear from you is the progress that's been done to grant the extension. I am going to say to the audience at this time, I strongly encourage you to keep the lines of communication open with the applicant and the agent, so that this kind of stuff doesn't come to Planning Commission. It can be addressed in your HOA meetings, presentations to the HOA, and that sort of thing. So if you want to continue to just bullet
I would
points.
just say,
Okay.
the only thing that I would say, what we are doing right now is in accordance with the Subdivision Map Act and with the city ordinances that are in place. The Subdivision Map Act allows for extensions such as this, especially through in the pandemic stuff that we've already been through. The map is submitted as of Tuesday for the city review. We would just ask that you keep to those guidelines. We were happy to talk about any other project if and when there is an application in place. But at this moment in time, there is no other application in place. There is no other project in place. It was just merely a conceptual discussion. That's it.
Okay, so back to my question. Well, I guess my concern is, which other people in the audience shared, is that your commitment to building the hub as is isn't quite there.
I wouldn't say that. We have entitlements.
You have entitlement, you have the right to,
hub,
you have
yes.
the right to, but asking for an extension, the development plan to build the hub, I'm asking you if that's what you're truly intending to do. I don't agree with an extension just so you have time to, come up with a new design. and can
Well,
have your hand in both ends. I
grading
agree with the
pl-
extension. If you have a valid reason to develop and build the hub.
Grading plans will be submitted in the next few weeks
Okay,
for the site plan.
that's what it said on the letter.
Yep.
And so that was 2 months ago that you said that would have been completed.
Yeah.
But, okay, so you are working on the.
You'll
grading
have
plans
plans in the city before the end of this year.
For grading plans.
Yes, you will.
Again, my concern is, especially since you've been coming up with substantially different plans. I know it's a different project.
We haven't become,
That's not a valid excuse to get an extension for a project that it doesn't appear that you're really dedicated to building the hub as designed. And COVID, it's hard to argue whether, I can't argue whether COVID is an issue or not because it affected people differently. But if you had the time to, if you would have put the time on working towards this project rather than working towards a different design for the property, I would be more convinced of your intention. But that.
I understand that. And I'll
that's my
just leave
concern.
I'll just leave your statements for the record, given the location of your residence, etc. Thank you.
Okay, stop.
Okay,
Stop the public comments, please.
yeah, and we can't have back and forth. It has to be directed at staff or at the applicant.
Okay, please stop the comments.
No further questions.
Okay, Commissioner Sarkia,
No comments at this time.
Vice Chair Mercado.
The only comment I have is that there's been numerous extensions to projects that have not come to fruition. And so I think that there's no reason why not to extend this one, as if he already has the entitlements, something can be built here, and they're making a reasonable request. So I would approve that extension.
Are you making a motion?
I'll wait for your comments, but I will make a motion.
Okay, I do not have further comments about the extension. I will say again to the audience, please keep communication open with the applicant and the agent on the existing project as well as future projects. I don't know, is the HOA board president here, Joe? He is here. Okay. So again, I would just like to have you, so you can keep these discussion items open. Also, from what I understand on the last go around, when the hub was approved 5 years ago, there was open communication with the Rancho de Maria residents and the applicant. Okay. Anyway, I'm just encouraging you to keep it open because I believe key issues were negotiated at that time. So that is all my comments. Is there a motion on this item?
Madam Chair, I will make the motion to adopt resolution number 2209 as stated.
And I will second it. Roll call.
Vice Chair Mercado,
Aye.
Chair Hamel,
Aye.
Commissioner Liggett,
No.
Commissioner Sarkia.
Aye.
Okay, motion approves 3-1. Thank you for your participation.
You guys look like you're clowns.
I'll give everyone a minute to leave if they choose to do so.
Okay, so your presentation.
You know, that was a threat by him here. And I would, you is that?
Okay.
Not his fault, but it's a shadow down. So I think you can take that and what word from it.
Okay.
So,
Thanks, Lynn.
Okay, I'm going to ask the public to take discussion outside so we can continue with the meeting. All right. Other business items. Number 3, Shannon Winery Project Redesign 291 Industrial Way. Preliminary Review Update 21-FDP-04. Contract Planner Tucker.
Hi, thank you, Chair Hamel and members of the Planning Commission. Before I get started with my presentation, which I will try and keep really brief, I just wanted to note that there was a pack of information distributed. Oops. There was a pack of information distributed this afternoon to the Planning Commission, which consisted of a revised staff report with some minor corrections, but we needed to clarify that for the record. And also distributed were comments received from the.
Irma, I'm going to stop you for a second. Please, gentlemen in the back, take your conversation outside. Okay, continue, Irma.
Okay. Also distributed were comments we received from the Building and Safety Division, as well as the design review comments. So I just want to make sure that to state that for the record and that to make sure that you all received that email. If you did not, let us know and we will provide you with the information. So this project, which is the Shannon Winery project, is actually a redesigned. It consists of a redesigned plan for a project that was previously submitted for preliminary review by the Planning Commission in last year. They had received an incomplete letter at that time, and there were several items that they needed to address. And their solution to addressing those comments was to come up with a redesign for the project. So with that, I would just like to refresh the Commission's information and memory on where the project is located. It's located at the corner of Industrial Way and Highway 246. It's a prominent gateway to the Industrial Way manufacturing corridor. It's a 17-acre, I'm sorry, no, 16-acre property. Too much information tonight. It's just under an acre, it's 0.97 net acre property. The adjacent uses to the west are the Rancho Club Mobile Home Park. To the north are it's a residential development that when this aerial was taken, that didn't exist quite yet, but that was the Juliet Walk townhomes that have since been built. To the east is vacant property. It's currently vacant. And to the south is a continuation of the industrial corridor. It's the Central Coast Water Authority, which is located immediately adjacent to the property. Because the property is a corner lot, the front yards are considered both the Industrial Way and the Highway 246 frontage. The rear yard, the western boundary, is the one that abuts the mobile home estates. And the side yard, which is the interior lot line, is the one that is adjacent to the Central Coast Water Authority. No setback is required. Setbacks are required from the southern boundary, from the southern yard, from the rear boundary. 25-foot setback is required, and it is being provided with the project plans. And on the two frontages, 10-foot setbacks are required, and they are also provided by the revised project plans. Next slide. I think I mentioned some of this information. So the zoning here is CS, service commercial. The height limit in this area is 35 feet for the buildings, and the proposed height of the new buildings that's newly designed is 28 feet 8 inches, so it's well below the 35-foot maximum rather. There's no maximum lot coverage, so then we don't have an exact square footage of the footprint, so we'll need to get that, but there is no maximum, and they're not close to having full coverage of the lot. The landscape area required here is a minimum 5%, and they are proposing over 15% of landscaping area. Let's see, I mentioned the setbacks required. The parking requirements that we are looking at there's several different uses being proposed for these buildings. So for the production area, it's 1 space per 500 square foot plus 1 space for 1.5 employees. The office and retail area has 1 per 300 square feet plus spaces for the employees. And the warehouse storage areas that are being proposed, that's 1 space per 1,000 square foot of building improvements and 1 space per 4 employees. The proposed project consists of the construction of 16,410 square feet of building area, plus an additional 1,283 square feet of covered loading area. It's a full 1-story building with a partial 2nd story and a small storage basement for bottle archives. The prior design, I would just like to mention, consisted of 12,474 square feet of building, which was about 4,000 square feet less than what is currently being proposed. The operations, similar to the prior version of the project, the operations of the Shannon Wine Company would be accommodated here. The uses include a tasting room, an office area, production area, barrel, bottle and dry goods storage, the bottle archive, and related open space areas. Let's see. There's a proposed parking of 25 spaces. And preliminary review by staff indicated that potentially 27 spaces could be required. We'll address that a little bit later in the presentation. Access is from both Industrial Way and Highway 246 in these revised plans. Previously, it was just from Industrial Way. So with this redesign, the project actually has through circulation. They are proposing to relocate the driveway on Industrial Way a little bit further south to avoid conflicts with being too close to the corner. And this would be a 2-way driveway. And then they would have a 1-way only drive aisle and exit out to State Route 246. Okay. So there are a number of mature coast live oaks, native trees on the property. Most of them will be preserved, but 2 trees are being considered for removal. There was an arborist report submitted. This arborist report did recommend that one of the trees should be removed because it's unhealthy and failing. And again, this is one of the items that was correct in the staff report. And the tree that is to be removed for health reasons is the 48-inch oak tree, not as noted on the slide here. But there is one 24-inch oak tree that would be impacted by the proposed development. And the applicant is proposing to replace it at a ratio of 3:1 on site as allowed for by the tree ordinance. So code exceptions being requested include an exception that would allow the project to save a row of existing mature oak trees along the rear western property line adjacent to the mobile home park. And the reason that this exception is being requested, and they're proposing an alternate to what is actually required by the code. There's an existing chain link fence there, and these mature trees are growing at the base, and they would continue to serve, these trees would continue to serve to screen the adjacent residential uses. Whereas if they installed new fence that's required by the code, it could potentially lead to the decline of the trees, and they'd have to do new tree plantings, which would take a while for those trees to grow as tall as the trees that are there right now. So staff is reviewing this code exception, and it's potentially supportive pending further review. All right, next slide. Okay. All right, we'll just quickly go through the site plans. You were provided with full size set of plans, but it's several buildings, and it looks like one building complex. The buildings on the north, on the top portion of the site, are situated in such a way as to actually provide a nice buffer for the Highway 246 frontage. And the siting of the buildings closer to the Highway 246 from what was previously proposed actually provides better use of the overall site and allows for through circulation where they did not have that before. The primary access here would be along Industrial Way, and we'll take a look at that a little bit. Well, I'll talk about that a little bit later on. Let's go to the next slide. This is a floor plan of the buildings that are proposed, the production area, storage area. There'd be a small tasting room up at the front, access from the parking area there, an office would be upstairs, and the small basement area would be downstairs below the office. All right, next slide. The exterior elevations were provided and labeled with a lot of the different information that is required. So this is the rear elevation is on the top, which shows what would be viewed from the neighboring mobile home park. The bottom elevation is the front yard, and this is the east elevation, which would be from Industrial Way. And that's the main orientation for the project, would be from Industrial Way. And the next two slides show the southern elevation, which is viewed from the neighboring Central Coast Water Authority. And then finally on the front yard, which is what is viewed from Highway 246. And they have provided landscaping along the Highway 246 frontage as a buffer for this, the proposed buildings. Right, next please. The representation of the materials and colors that they are proposing to use. Next. And also provided was a conceptual landscaping plan, which shows some of the plants that they're proposing to use. And this landscape plan also addressed lighting locations, exterior lighting locations. For both of these items, we're going to require a little bit more detail. The landscape plan actually needs to be marked with the corresponding locations and the symbols that correspond to the trees and the plantings that are being proposed, so that we can clearly tell which ones they are. And as far as the additional information for the landscape plan, we will also need a irrigation plan, conceptual irrigation plan, as we move forward with this. And I just wanted to mention that on the lighting, they did provide some specifications for the lighting, but more detail is required for that. And we will also be requiring a photometric plan to analyze the brightness of the light and the lighting, especially because this is adjacent to residential areas, and I want to minimize any impacts on those adjacent uses. Okay. And the grading plan, I believe, was the next slide up. Are we, it's,
Yeah, technical difficulty a
okay.
little bit here, but let me see if I
Okay.
can,
And actually, the grading plan just has a lot of information on how they were proposing to relocate the driveway, and the other access, point up along, Highway 246. They would be actually enhancing, improving the driveway apron that's located there. Moving on to the next plan that was provided. This is, the survey actually provides a pretty good view of the adjacent uses. Shows, the close proximity, to the upper right of the, ranch Club Mobile Estates and how close they are to the property. And it shows the existing row of trees there that are actually serving to, screen part of those uses from the property. Okay, let's move on. So, an application was submitted for a final development plan. Other permits may potentially be required, such as a CUP if there's to be any coffee or food service. I don't believe that the applicant is considering any of these at this point. Sign permit would be required, solar permit required at the installation of future roof panels. Those are being proposed. Fat oils and grease may be required if there's any food prep involved. Industrial wastewater discharge, that is an important one for this particular project, as wineries do require this. And let's see, Caltrans would need to review the project, and there would be some variances or modifications for the exceptions that may be required and requested for the project. Okay. I think, let's see, I've covered some of this. Let's see, along the western portion of the rear yard, the 25-foot setback that's required per code, they are providing the 25-foot setback. I talked earlier about how the code requires the 6-foot masonry wall and the screening. Staff is reviewing this potentially for an exception that the existing row of trees there be retained to serve for the screening. And on the landscape plan, we notice that there are additional landscaping elements proposed, and we would just like to request further details on those, just to see what the applicant is proposing. Okay. I mentioned the parking analysis. The preliminary analysis showed that 27 spaces are required. The project proposes 25 spaces. This includes one ADA space and also one ADA accessible electrical vehicle charging station space. They are providing the loading zone that's required, and we'd like to see where bike racks may be shown on the property. So the factors that could impact the final parking evaluation are such items as whether the production and storage areas would be staffed by the same employees, and also whether or not there will be any permanent outdoor seating proposed for the wine tasting area that could involve additional seating parking requirements. But those are items that we'll ask the applicant to provide us more information on. Okay, so I've covered the access from Industrial Way and State Route 246, the improvement of the existing driveway apron on State Route 246. So the interior circulation appears to be somewhat tight, especially for large commercial vehicles. And this is an area that we would request to be reviewed a little bit further. The trash in the recycling area, Marburg, our trash collection service, they need to review it and comment on the adequacy of the design for access for their trash trucks. And any design considerations would need to be incorporated into the plans. And finally, to address access circulation, a traffic study will be required to address not only the traffic generated by the project, but also to analyze the on and off-site circulation, large vehicle maneuvering, turning movements into and out of the site, visibility, congestion, and parking impacts. Okay. So one of the items that was circulated today, because we received the architectural design review, and we were last minute, we were reviewing that, make sure that they addressed all the issues. So they had some comments on the site design. I'll just mention a few. They noted that the community design guidelines, which is the primary document that is by which these projects are reviewed at this stage, in addition to the code. But the community design guidelines do call, as does the code, for preservation of existing stands of trees wherever possible. On the state Route 246 setback, it calls for a berm with landscaping to screen the parking and noise mitigation, provide noise mitigation. But in reviewing the proposed building siting and how the landscaping is laid out, it may provide adequate screening and noise mitigation at that point, at that location. There's other parking area screening is required as well. So we're going to review this to see how much of this actually does apply to the project and would make sense. The building design is agrarian. The materials are consistent with the community design guidelines, and the design review commented that the buildings are proportioned nicely. So they're generally incorporating, by and large, the requirements of the community design guidelines. You just need to address some of the comments on there. Let's move on. So they've mentioned the landscaping area. The arborist recommends removal of the one unhealthy oak tree. One oak tree would be impacted by development. And again, we were just asking if any alternatives have been considered, so that the oak tree that is impacted by the development could be preserved. So just like to hear what the applicant would say about that. I mentioned irrigation plans are needed and further details are required on the landscape plan. Fencing and screening, covered that already, from both the abutting residential zoning and across from the residential zoning. Okay, we can move on here. So the signage. So this is a prominent street corner, and attractive and inviting monument signage is encouraged at this location. The code allows for 325 square feet of sign area. There's 141 square feet proposed, so they're definitely compliant with the amount of sign area that's being proposed. The code allows for 2 monument signs, 1 on each frontage. So the revised project is proposing 3 signs, 3 monument signs, and which is not consistent with the municipal code requirement. So some of the considerations that we could look at is alternative design solutions for one of the signs, or request a sign exemption. And we would need to see if we could make the findings for that. I mean, those are municipal code findings that we would need to make. And additional detail is needed in order to fully evaluate the signage, which includes the dimensions, materials, content, and lighting. Let's see, I think I mentioned before the preliminary lighting locations were provided on the site, on the landscaping plan. They provided some information on the fixtures they propose to be using, but additional clarification actually is needed on the dark sky friendly aspect and the Kelvin rating of the lighting. And again, photometric analysis will be needed. Okay. I think we covered these: traffic and circulation study, industrial waste discharge permits, specifications and calculations will be required for the proposed wastewater treatment system. And also odor control measures would be needed because of the location is adjacent to sensitive residential areas and wine production operations can sometimes result in odors. So just we need to hear how those are being addressed. As far as the environmental guidelines are concerned, per CEQA, this is potentially a class 32 exemption for infill development. But in order for us to make findings of exemption from CEQA, we do require the traffic and circulation study so that we can demonstrate that it does in fact meet the standards for the exemption, which one of the standards is that there are no traffic and circulation impacts. So as far as additional items go, we have requested the fire department to provide comments in writing. They're forthcoming. But I understand from speaking with the applicants that they have met with the fire department and the fire department has reviewed their plans. I'll let the applicant speak to what their comments were, but we are waiting for written comments for the fire department. And I don't think staff has any additional comments at this point. But you know, as we move through refining the review, there may be some additional comments that come up that need to be addressed. And again, as we did previously, planning commission comments as well as staff comments will be summarized in an updated incomplete letter for the applicant to address in their further version of the plans. Okay. So the recommendation is that the planning commission provide comments and direction to the applicant and to staff on the proposed revised project design and the site layouts. So I am available for any questions from the planning commission at this point. The applicant is here, actually the applicant, property owner Gavin Shannon, as well as the architect Brian Ridley. I believe they have a.
I would like to just maybe give a quick reintroduction.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Yes, please,
Okay.
please step up and introduce yourself, because I think we've only met you on Zoom.
Yeah. Well, and I first want to thank my brother Dave and my mom Catherine. I don't think anyone's been as excited to watch a planning meeting on Zoom as my mom was.
Well, they got a good one, didn't they?
Yeah, maybe the elevations.
Sure. Yeah, that's not the right one.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give a quick update after the previous meeting, which was almost a year ago, actually technically more than a year ago. I found the comments to be incredibly helpful, and in addressing them, I think it's taken some time, but I think we've ended up with a much better design on a number of fronts, and I kind of wanted to just go through those. You know, what is one of the huge practical issues with the first element is it just didn't comply to a lot of fire needs, and that had us dive into circulation. One of the comments in our first conceptual meeting was maintaining that, or sorry, it was our previous meeting from a year ago, was keeping the northern apron and also potentially moving the driveway on the east side, northeast, southwest, there we go, on the east side down a little bit. And kind of all those comments really came together with this plan. There was also some commentary about just making it feel a little more welcoming to the community. And I think Brian, our architect, has done an amazing job at really removing a lot of, you know, before we had kind of a really nice, but a large wall going around the whole property. And I think we've found a good balance of keeping that front area very welcoming and very open, and also having the production side kind of anchored in the back. Yeah, so the fire issues, the traffic, you know, I think the style and design is more agrarian than the previous one. I think it's a good looking building that'll be a nice addition to the community here. So that's been a positive. Yeah, and then the signs are interesting. I'm open with signs with whatever suggestions there are. I know there was a comment from our previous meeting about having kind of more signage or a more kind of nicer way for pedestrians to get on. So I kind of see, technically that is our industrial way memorial sign. I kind of view as a pedestrian sign. And I think maybe if we make that smaller, or that might fit a little better. But I'm totally open with signs and would kind of defer to the expertise. And then, one of the big comments, which ended up being very, very helpful from the previous meeting, was to bring in a arborist. And as you guys know, keeping the trees is a big priority for me. But with I received advice from the commission to not build a building around potentially dying tree or trees. And that ended up being pretty important and saved me probably a lot of trouble. So it is, we did work as hard as we could, including jaunting that northern side of the building in to keep that one tree. And I believe we're going to far exceed the 3-to-1 planting requirement. This is hopefully going to be my home for a long time. So I want to watch hopefully some new trees grow for 50+ years. And I don't want to take up too much of your time, especially after that first part. But I did want to just briefly go through some quick things that I think are important. One was traffic, and we have designed this, and Brian can talk more about it, but we have designed this to fit I believe a 52-foot trailer. Generally, we'd never see trucks like that, but if you have a truck coming in that you're not expecting, you don't want them to get stuck. So we did design it with that in mind. Our typical traffic is about 7 to 8 pickups per month. So we're pretty light in terms of pickups, and they're generally small refrigeration trucks or vans. It's pretty rare for us to see a full-blown semi, but still we wanted to make sure we didn't have to figure out how to get one of those out if they drove in without telling us. Yeah, and then I did speak to fire in person a couple months ago. They were very helpful. They did describe a desire to have some of that one-way be a two-way. I think the challenges we run into there are if that road gets well, yeah, I should say, to be totally accurate, they said this is perfectly to code, but if we could have this, we would want wider. And I think one of the challenges is as you make that road wider, you get closer to the oaks on that side and potentially remove the sidewalk, which I think is important on the south building. So we've tried to really balance a lot of the comments, and I'm pretty happy with what we've done and looking forward to hearing what you guys think. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Obviously, if there's any questions, I'm here.
Good evening, Chair Hamel and Commissioners. I'm Brian Ridley, the new architect from Brackett Architecture, and we're based in San Luis Obispo. So it's my first Buellton Planning Commission, which turned out to be an exciting one. So thank you for having the stamina to listen to me talk a little bit as well. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So this is the same information that you had in your packets, just sort of reformatted for the screen a little bit. So I just wanted to comment a little bit on the sort of site design, circulation, and the trees as well, as that was a bit of a question, considerations regarding the removal of one of the healthy trees and the preservation of one. So effectively, what we tried to do is we reevaluated the site, was establish more what I would consider sort of good urban planning, setting the building up as more of an urban edge to address the highway. And so this was done across the street as well with the townhome project that's sort of right up on 246. And so this is sort of taking that similar approach and lets the building, and especially our sort of quiet storage type functions, serve as that buffer to the rest of the site. So we're using the building to serve that function rather than trying to put up just a wall around the buildings, and still providing the full 10-foot setback full of landscape, And then where we have that pocket sort of cut into the building in between our barrel storage and our dry goods storage to allow for the preservation of one of those 24-inch oak trees. And so that does a couple of things for us. It reduces the unbroken span of the building there really nicely, allows us to adjust the roof line. And then as you turn to the dry goods storage building, that building sort of rotates its orientation. So we get two different roof expressions facing the street. So the complex starts to have different appearance, from all sides effectively. And then with that setup along the 246 edge, we really stepped the building down as you turn down industrial ways. So the building functions a bit as an attractor and a gateway for industrial. But we take that taller 27, I think 28-foot maximum height barrel storage building, and then on the end there, it steps down, I believe, closer to 16 feet, and then transitions where both the pedestrian and the vehicular entry are to the site with the tasting pavilion, which we see as this lower, sort of acting as the front porch to the site. So that's really a much lower scale building there. And then the production building is set back a little bit. Again, that's a bit of a shorter building. That's really full of tanks. And it's very just double loaded on the interior, very, very, very functional. And then from a site circulation perspective with the vehicles, we have that two-way entry that we pulled as far from the intersection as we can to just alleviate issues with queuing distance. And then that initial, we'll say, sort of square area of parking, we really envision as the visitor parking. And that gives people the sort of easy access to come in, park, and then head out the way they came. Whereas the remainder of the parking we see more as staff, employee, and overflow. And that really lets you come in, park, and then find your way back out to the highway. As Gavin mentioned, we did run through that, we'll say, southwest corner with a turning template on the big 53-foot semi. And so while it is tight, that's probably a fair characterization, it does work. And then, as Gavin mentioned, though, the majority of the vehicles going through there are nowhere near that size, and we'll have ample space to maneuver around in that area. So we feel good about that, but as part of our traffic analysis, that'll get evaluated again. And certainly if there's any adjustments needed at that point, we will make them. And indeed, the oak tree compensation, we have 8 new Coast Live oaks planned for around the perimeter of the building. So I think we noted 3 to 1 as the minimum, but we're doing more than that. Certainly, it's a great tree for the climate, and we have an affinity for it as well. In terms of parking, I think we'll work with Irma on that to figure out exactly what's needed. I think we calculated things slightly different from each other, but we'll have an opportunity to work through that. And we'd like to keep it at that 25 spot level. As you go from 25 to 26, the building code starts asking you to do a whole lot more things. So that's a nice threshold to sort of stay below if we can. And the electric vehicle spot being kind of good practice going forward, it's also a requirement of the California Green Building Code as well. You go first. All right. We don't necessarily need to delve into the signage a whole lot. Certainly the 2 monument signs on the left, one is at the intersection corner and then one is at the vehicular entrance to the site. The building wall sign, so basically monument signs 1 and 2 and the building sign 1 all meet all the requirements. I think those are fairly easy to move forward with. And then monument sign number 3 is a little bit of a different approach to the signage there, where it's sort of sitting in a space where it has a hard time being a monument sign, it has a hard time being a building sign. And so we can also work with Irma on that to see if there's a good way forward, either through some form of an exception or a different sign type entirely. But the goal there was to work with that site wall, bring in something that's more at the pedestrian level rather than being really high up on the building. And all 3 of these sort of low wall mounted signs are cut metal letter. The illumination is behind that, so in the evening it's not glaring at all. It's really just a nice sort of lightly backlit experience for those signs. The lighting for the wall sign is a gooseneck style, which fits with the agrarian motif. And if you'll go to the next slide as well, sort of dovetails into our site plan with landscape. And so really the perimeter is intended to have those large growing oak trees over time, and then infilled between that is a combination of drought tolerant shrubs, and then sort of a scaling down towards more meadow grasses. So we get a nice transition in scale and texture as you move from the sidewalk up to the building. And next slide, please. Yeah, so this is the palette also just blown up a little bit. So you can see there's a range of color that we're after, also of texture, and then also plants that do well throughout the seasons. The lighting is noted there over on the left. So the uppermost is our, I would say, our typical building light for illuminating the exterior of the building and the walkways around. The one in the middle is the sign lighting on the building, and then that tiny one, which looks a little bit funny, is just the parking standard. So looking for a light there that is very controllable in terms of cutoff and distribution, so that it's not, we're not getting light pollution and light trespass over towards the neighbors. And we've oriented all of our parking lot lighting on the south side, which is abuts the water authority, as opposed to putting, trying to install pole lighting and things like that on the side nearest the residences. So we're really trying to leave that side as calm and unimpacted, I guess. Which would be a great time to talk about the fence that abuts the neighbors as well. So the municipal code would ask us for a masonry fence there. And so along that side, there's, I believe it's 8 or 9 existing oak trees, and they're pretty well enmeshed with the chain link fence that's there. And putting in a masonry fence would require continuous concrete footings. And so the arborist said, don't do that, you'll kill all the trees. So fair enough. So our preference, and I think it's maybe just noted a bit too small on the landscape plan and the site plan, is to install a steel posts at a regular interval that we can do really kind of isolated concrete base for those. And then we would span in between it with a wood material that would echo and reflect the sort of barn style of siding that's on the building. So the hope there is that we can provide the additional visual break, would just leave the chain link fence sort of where it is and not disturb the trees where they are. But we're able to then increase that visual sense of privacy without impacting the trees negatively. So that would be our preference, and that's the way we'd like to tackle that. All right, next slide, please. This is the floor plan, so just a little bit more detail from the site plan that you saw earlier. And so I guess just very quickly, barrel storage as described, dry goods storage as well. The production, I sort of mentioned how the tanks are laid out in there, and then the small tasting room on the right-hand side, which has views out to the landscape buffer. And then we have the small owner office above and a sort of a long-term bottle archive downstairs, and a couple of restrooms and ground floor office for support staff. And next slide. This is our roof plan. I think to note, part of our roof design is intending on having a really nice south-facing solar array. So that's on the top of the bottle storage, top of the barrel storage building. And so that's part of how we decided to orient the roofs, was based off of that information. And our main roofs, as we'll see in the upcoming renderings, are a sort of a staggered clerestory style of roof. So we've broken the traditional gable as a way to maintain the height that we want inside, but also provide relief across the industrial scale of the buildings. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the Highway 246 elevation, but in perspective sort of dropped into the photograph there. And so you can see here the two different main buildings, if you will, bottle storage on the left, dry goods on the right, and that stepped clerestory style of roofing. And then connecting them is just a sort of a compressed portion of that barrel storage area that's notched in. We have a change of material to the barn siding, and then the remaining oak tree can stay and continue to be magnificent. Next slide. So this is the intersection corner. You can see the monument sign, and here's that transition in scale down from the 28-foot tall building down to the 16-foot building, and then beyond the landscape sort of carrying along to the pedestrian and vehicular entry. Next slide, please. And which there's the entry. So this again is that tasting pavilion. You can kind of catch the top corner of the owner office up above, which is set back as a bit of a sort of a penthouse style. But as I mentioned, this is really intended to feel sort of like the front porch to the project, the sense of arrival, deep overhangs, and kind of a rich tactile material in the barn siding, whereas the insulated buildings really need to maintain their sort of metal seamed appearance for best functionality. Next. Just kind of carrying a little bit further along, to sort of see the whole campus all together and the various roof lines. So the production building on the far left has the traditional gable style, sort of the simplest of the buildings. And next slide, maybe we have one more. Oh, yes. So the material palette. So, and if I need to stop, just tell me to stop. We have two main colors for the metal siding. The darker one is for the production building, which is more internal to the site, and then the two external ones are in that more medium gray bronze. We do have some exposed structural steel, which is intended to sort of echo the exposed columns and posts that you might find in agrarian buildings, which would more traditionally be made out of wood. But again, given the style of the buildings and how they are most efficiently built, which is in a pre-engineered metal package, we do have some exposed steel. And then there's a couple different exposed woods. The darker one would be the vertical siding on the buildings, and then the lighter one up above on the eaves. And then we just have a couple of louvers and corrugated metal, which is the metal building eaves. And then this kind of composite image in the middle, really just demonstrating the division of the windows into smaller elements and in combination with the barn siding, just to kind of provide a little bit of an example for you. Next page. And so then the elevations as they go. So you can just kind of cycle through them, I suppose. And then I think the last slide is just our civil plan, which I just have for discussion if needed, but it's just a lot of numbers, pretty much. So I think I got through everything. We're super happy to answer any questions you have and very interested in your feedback. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
I just had one quick, sorry, I just had one quick thing that I remembered, which was to talk about staffing, because there is, and it makes sense for manufacturing, there's a significant amount of parking, the 500 feet, one space per 500 feet, but at our current size, which we intend to be that same size here, we currently have 3 employees, myself included. So if we doubled in size, which would be well outside the capacity of this building and not really possible, we'd have 6. So yeah, I do think we'll more than likely have plenty of parking here, which is always a good thing, probably. Oh, and then the roof, I forgot to mention that I was really excited, and this came from a comment as well from the previous meeting, that bringing the roof from 35 to 28, 29 feet, I think really just changes the feel of it without impacting anything practically. So that was a change. When I saw the renderings, I thought, God, it looks a lot different, it feels a lot better. So I was excited to see that. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we will ask questions. Commissioner Liggett, questions for
Yes,
staff or the applicant?
Yes, great presentation. I think, really good creative solutions to the challenges that were presented last time around. I'm really impressed. Making much better use of the space. I had concerns about the circulation from the street into the site before. You had to walk across the parking lot. Now you have a defined outdoor space for the patrons. Really no concerns with the layout. I appreciate the different angled roofs and pop outs and varying heights. As far as kind of urban design strategy that you pointed on, I think that will make it a much more comfortable place to walk along. My biggest concerns really are the trees. The one, is that fine?
Only if
Just
you know
kidding.
my discussion the last 2 days.
Yes. Sorry. The tree that you're preserving, number 2, where you pop out the building. Love it. I mean, the tree's beautiful, iconic. I was out there today. I'm concerned that it's not really working. I mean, I don't know, but it seems like the building's only 5 feet from the trunk. So I hope that works. I really do hope you could preserve that tree, because that will make an iconic building. But and then along the fence line that you would the trailer park, your solution was something I was thinking. So I'm glad that you came up with a solution. It does need some sort of fencing. Again, I walked there today and there's a chain link fence. It's chest high and it's someone's backyard.
Yeah.
So it does need something more than just, I think, vegetation, and potentially I think that would be a good solution if approved. And then I guess lastly, the concern or thought is that really dark metal that you're proposing. Any concerns of that absorbing so much heat? It might fry plants that it's adjacent to it. I've never worked with metal that dark, so I don't know. As an architect, does that get quite hot during the day here?
So I think fundamentally, your intuition's not off, certainly. But the metal coatings at this point, they particularly, I think, mostly driven by state of California, they build sort of high emissivity layers into that coating. So effectively, it doesn't really absorb as much heat energy. And then the panels themselves are fully insulated also. So there's not, they tend to absorb that rather than just re-radiate it out. So I don't have I guess, a big concern about that, but I think we can certainly just try and make sure that we're being aware of that as well. You know, on the Highway 246 side of things too, we are on the north side there, so I think that's probably safe, so to speak. And I'm happy to also chat with our arborist that we have on board about that issue and just see what he thinks about it.
Okay, yeah, I'm not concerned with the color so much as just how emissive it is, the albedo, and how it reacts to the plants.
Yeah, trying to make that well insulated and effective. That'll be a big thing on my kind of list too, is making sure we don't create this big heat sink. And I've looked into those materials a little bit. They seem pretty amazing, but my brain doesn't quite compute them because it is dark.
That's all my comments. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Sarkia.
I too am very impressed with your evolution. The design and how you're working with the existing oak trees. I look forward to your traffic and circulation study because it'll affect not just your property, but the other properties there. I know east of you is an open lot too, right? That in the future, I'm sure will be developed, and they'll be able to. They will need that traffic study, and I wonder if it'll be any different than what we will find on your project. Again, I'm very impressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Vice Chair Mercado.
Thank you it's a great presentation. I like all the changes. 2 questions. During crush, I know sometimes that's late at night, but prefer small type winery. Are you worried about any noise variances or lighting that when the trucks do bring in your grapes to crush, or
Yeah, that's a good question. We generally receive about 10 to being a small winery. And I'm sorry, but this information is from the previous harvest. So I'll recompile it for this last harvest. But I believe we were between 10 and 16 grape deliveries. And those are generally early in the morning at between 8 and 10. We like to pick the grapes at night when they're cool and have them dropped off. So I think that works in our favor. And then some of the site plan things of having the forklift travel kind of center on the inside rather than the outside of the building, with noise in mind, I think was helpful. But and then being a very small team, I work very hard to not work very late because I
can do the next day.
I find whenever I'm tired, that's when we make mistakes. So those hours are things generally have to go wrong for us to be there, well after the sun has set, and that's a very rare occurrence, luckily. So.
I just, curiosity and just neighbors, but I think your site plans are great. I like all the changes. I'm big on trees. I've always been big on trees and landscaping. And because you're on the 246 corridor, your monument sign there, I think still is important. And however we can make that look like $1 million, I'd be all for it.
Awesome.
Other than that, I think everything is great. I think having the 2 egress and egress with the fire department, it's a good decision for them and for you guys, because it just knowing what goes on there. My wife and I do walk. We live way on the other side of town, but we walk to my in-laws used to live there, And so, it's nice having the sidewalk there. And I think with your landscaping, it's going to be a perfect solution.
Thank you.
Okay. I just have a few questions and I'll do my comments at the end and kind of wrap it up. From previous meetings with you, it seems like, it's, there won't be a lot of tasting, a lot of, so, and the cars, and this is the ingress and egress. So I'm kind of wondering, because so you have the parking lot in the front there, the square, and then the back driveway that goes in east, or where does it go? It goes west and then north, onto the 246. I'm wondering if there's any kind of way you can, like during non-busy days, if you will, kind of cone that alley or that roadway off so the tasting people, can just come and go in there without throwing them back out to the 246 on that
Yeah,
back driveway.
and that was big in our minds when we designed that. and
Okay.
Seeing it as kind of potentially overflow parking, but
Yeah.
having some sort of barrier, and that's why we made that two-way up there in front, so that we kind of
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think it'll be a great addition to give people a view of the production and what happens there, and kind of a connection to the agrarian nature of things. But you also don't want people getting lost. And
Right.
So and yeah, I think a buffer right around where the trash is. I believe we have a gate there.
Oh, okay.
That could be open or shut, and then also
Oh, that's probably perfect.
yeah, and then also having a significant landscape buffer so that when you're in the tasting room, you look out and you see plants and trees, and but you kind of prevent the ability of people to like wander.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. The other thing. Oh, I'm just kind of curious from the architect, how are you gonna do that basement for the library cellar? I mean, is it like a 6-foot basement or an 8-foot basement or?
We have talked about it at some length, so,
I can speak on the necessity.
sure. No, I guess is your question sort of from an implementation, a construction perspective?
Yeah, or just, how big is it? How tall will it be underground?
Yeah. I don't think we're contemplating anything sort of above about 9 feet of clear space down there. But we did intentionally position it below sort of the tasting pavilion. So there's a different construction methodology between that building, the larger pre-engineered metal building style. So effectively with those buildings, it's best if you just let them do their thing and not upset their simplicity. And so the tasting pavilion being more conventionally built, wood framing, et cetera. I mean, it's effectively, it's a bit of a brute force effort to dig it out. But would be cast concrete basement walls, and but that would then be the foundation for the remainder of that building.
Okay. Okay.
So
just curious.
Yeah,
and I totally understand the necessity. I wanted the logistics.
And to be honest, there's a very real chance that this just does not fit into the budget in any way, shape, or form. But as a winemaker, I love watching my wines age. To be able to, to be able to throw bottles in a hole somewhere and leave them be for years and years is a fantasy of every winemaker for some weird reason.
Yeah.
We'll have that flight test 10 years down the road.
Yeah, no, totally.
And my business is now 16 years old, and when we sell about 50% of our product abroad. And when we do, a big calling card of ours is being able to bring those older bottles and showing people that this is a very serious product that can compete with the best of Europe and other areas. So yeah, that ageability is a big factor for us.
I hope it works.
Yeah. Then I had a couple of questions for Rose. And I sent her a quick email the other day. There was comments in the staff report on the driveway paving and driving over the public utility easements on the west side. And so I just asked Rose if that's okay that they pave over and drive over that.
Yes, that's not a problem for the utilities. It's permanent structures or something, a giant, a future oak tree we would not want over there. But anything small landscaping, shallow type roots, and movable things and paving is certainly fine.
Okay, perfect. The other thing, I was just curious about, again, kind of coming from the staff report, the apron on the 246, at some point, does that have to be addressed or I guess addressed with Caltrans?
Right. At some point, we do need to forward the development plans to Caltrans for comment because they will have access on there. There aren't any actual improvements since that driveway is existing that I don't believe that they should have be required for an encroachment permit or submittal. But because they'll be having traffic through there, likely Caltrans will have a comment or something. But the driveway is existing, so there shouldn't be any particular issues. I can't say for sure that they won't be required to do anything else by Caltrans, but they'll need to be involved probably at some point.
Okay. And then I was thinking too, along the lines that either us or them or whoever would be in charge of that, would on that driveway coming out, you'd probably want to just have a right turn only. So you're not spilling people out, left turn and that kind of thing. Other comments, I walked the property yesterday. That's why I was laughing, because I walked over there and looked at all the trees. Some of the comments from the staff report on that chain link fence and the small existing oak trees that are there. I like the solutions that you've come up with on that, because I was like, wow, that's really going to disturb the neighbors. And I always preach to everybody, practice a good neighbor policy, pretend like, what if you're living there or your parents are there, or, that kind of thing. So it seems like you've addressed that. And I mean, those trees are kind of nice. And there's even, I think it's on the neighbor's property, there's kind of some big evergreen or pine tree there. So it's kind of cool looking. So I think you've done a good job with that, what you've presented tonight on that. Also, I think this is maybe a code, when we were requiring the whole front on the fronting the 246, the solid 6-foot wall. And I like what you've done on that, and I would not be opposed to continuing with what you're doing and having the wall broken up, but with landscape. And so there's a nice buffer, but it's not just a solid wall.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, and then I also on the big trees, the big oaks, the 48 inches. So there was a little bit of confusion at first, and I was really bummed that the big one was just going to be removed for development, but we found out that was incorrect. So I'm glad that the big tree is declining and can be removed without too much of conflict, I guess. And then, but also on the 24-inch one, I think it's correct. Is it number 3? Is it? Yeah. I mean, you have to, if you're replacing 3-to-1 ratio, I would not be opposed to that either. And even if you can go 4-to-1 or whatever. See, the last thing I think is the signage, and we have too many monument signs. So I was just kind of thinking, I mean, obviously you want the big one on the building and maybe that one on 246. And you want the 246 and you want the corner because you want to showcase your property. Maybe the one that goes into the tasting room, that monument sign can be pared down or done something different with. Because again, maybe you're not expecting that many wine tasting customers, and they should be able to get there after they've seen the other signs.
Yeah.
I think that's really all my comments, questions. I might come back. Do you have further, do we want to summarize?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
This is a go. It looks great.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I just want to say again, it is Prominent Gateway, we're really excited because it's a nice property. It looks great. You have done a great job redesigning it so it's more efficient and it better addresses all of our concerns. And let's just make that a jewel of a property.
I
Go
hope so.
forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. And I guess one quick question about Caltrans is I do kind of hear stories about them taking large amounts of time to review things. Is that something we'd want to get into them pretty quickly or?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we can talk later. About,
Yes, yeah.
perfect. That's an easy answer.
We were just waiting to make sure that, the project is well received and, go forward with that.
Yeah, I think, have we provided enough feedback for you?
Yeah, I mean,
More than enough.
I hate to repeat myself, but when I started this project, people warn you about development and I think the comments from a year ago have improved this project for me as the owner incredibly. So
Great.
I feel like I've got 10 plus consultants. Yeah, I think finding Brian and finding these creative solutions to kind of fix almost everything.
Yeah.
Was extremely helpful. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Great.
And it was so, just so you know, we don't vote on that. We're just providing feedback. Okay, on to written communications. None. Planning Commissioner comments. I have a few announcements, but do you guys have anything?
I do.
Yay.
We're reviving the San Ynez Valley Girls Softball Association.
Oh.
They didn't have, it wasn't active last year because of the COVID and whatnot. But my daughter and her father-in-law, they're putting together a season 2023 for all the girls in the valley. And it'll be exciting.
Great. Thank you.
I do have,
Okay.
it's kind of like the elephant in the room for the night. Disappointing to hear that our bowling alley is not going
Yes.
to come to fruition. And so my question to staff is, why are we having the issues? Supposedly.
So the issues that Carol,
What she brought up.
yeah, so I can't really speak to the fees and, resubmittals to the engineering department. But, the trail connection piece, I know that she was bringing that up and that was something that was conditioned at the time of approvals, I believe. So I'd have to go back and look at my
Right.
notes to kind of, be able to respond to some of her
But that was
concerns.
on both properties, really, correct?
Correct.
So, okay.
Yes.
So she should have known.
Yeah, and we've had some just, over the period of time that she's, had the original entitlements and then the modifications, there was discussions related to the trail connection. But yeah, again, I can't speak to the review fees because she was speaking about county building
Right.
and engineering. So, at this point, I haven't looked into those, what's going on with those in enough detail to be able to respond to that. But yeah.
And then can we have that response?
I can take a look, by the next planning commission
Fine.
meeting.
Yeah, do you want to agendize a?
I think so, because I she made it two good valid points, is that time is money, and whether we're looking at that project or Gavin's project, or if you go back 10 years and look at the Meritage project, for various reasons why they haven't been able to be built or come to fruition. I think it behooves the planning commission to know where we stand and where we're at, and we can approve all this stuff. If it doesn't come, something needs to be addressed.
Yeah, so I can make a note to put something on the agenda to discuss.
Okay.
Perfect.
That.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was going to, and we can do this at the end of, I was thinking at the end of the year or at the beginning of the year when the new commission forms,
Good job.
having us go through that status of the projects, in more detail, just to kind of familiarize new commissioners and just kind of to bring us all up to speed on, instead of a blurb, maybe 3 bullet points on each one, or, you know, just to kind of get
Absolutely.
us all back on track.
Good suggestion. And I was planning on bringing,
Okay.
like I typically do the first meeting
Yeah,
of the new
yeah.
planning commission. We'll do that. for
Okay.
sure.
A couple of quick announcements. Gotta get my glasses on. And this is, well, if anyone's still on TV, maybe. This weekend, is the Buellton Holiday Bazaar at Riverview Park, Saturday, 10 to 2. Come out and support your local crafts people and start working on your Christmas lists. Right now, starting tonight is, I think it's been on hiatus for a couple of years, but it's Taste of the Valley. And so it's a 4-day event. I think tonight it started in Los Alamos and it's in Los Olivos. I believe it's here in Buellton and Solvang. So it's the whole weekend and it's hosted in part by Visit the Santa Ynez Valley, Shelby Sim. And then next weekend, November 11th through the 13th, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday, is the Fall Fest on the Avenue of Flags. And I think that was a big hit last year. Did you go? Do you remember that? It's carnival rides
Yes, I
and
did.
all that. Yeah. And there are ales on the avenue. So there's something for children and adults, all that kind of stuff. So yeah. So that's it for me. Planning director report.
Just real quick, there are currently 3 seats available on the planning commission. So right now, the city is taking in applications for those 3 seats. And that is going to be through end of business day on November 30th, 2022. And basically they're for 4-year terms to expire in December of 2026. So if interested, please apply.
I encourage everyone on the dais to reapply, so I'm not here by myself.
And
at the
I
beginning
did send out an email to the commissioners that
that are
terms are
expiring. Okay, perfect.
today.
Thank
And
you.
that's all I have.
Okay, and we will adjourn at 8:06.
Good job, ladies.